So our final presentation will be a panel discussion, which is sponsored by Barnes & Thornburg. So I'm delighted to welcome to the program Naomi Kwong, who's a corporate attorney at ACS or at Barnes & Thornburg, is also the chair at ACSI, and then Mr. Yingjie Hu, who is the commercial counselor for the Chinese consulate, who will also be joined by Mr. Craig Allen. So turn it over to you, Naomi.
Thank you, Colin. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to see Mr. Hu. It's a pleasure to see Ambassador Allen, and Colin. I know there are a lot more audience out there. It's kind of awkward. I'm glad that we're on a panel. At least we can see each other. So it's kind of hard for our presenters today. And so thank you for all the presenters today. So I want to welcome everyone. This is going to be a very informal discussion. We have heard some excellent presentations that dive deep into some of the issues that I'm sure all of us are aware of, are concerned about. So I really hope that this panel, and obviously Mr. Hu and Ambassador Allen, we have had the opportunity to connect before, and we really wanted to bring this. We can't travel now. Both sides can travel. I'm very pleased that we have at least 7 cities in China participants, participating, and obviously our Hoosier attendees, and probably from other parts of the U.S. as well. So we can't travel now. So I really wanted to bring that discussion. We really want to bring that discussion more closer to if we were on the ground today. And we are hoping that you will be our eyes, our ears, give us a sense of what's really going on in the ground right now, since we can't travel. So I do have to do my duties. I give a couple of real quick administrative kind of instructions. If you all, I would encourage you. We can't see you raise your hands. We can't see you speak. But if you can put in your in the chat box in a Q&A, questions for our panelists. And I'm glad that we had some presenters do crystal ball gazing. So hopefully that's on the cards as well. So with that, I want to just welcome again Mr. Hu, and he is currently the commercial counsel at the Chicago China Consul General Office, and he took office in January 2020. We had the privilege to actually meet him before COVID shut down. We had lunch, and he even had an event here in Indiana before everything shut down. So Mr. Hu, we're so glad you can join us again today. You've had wonderful tenure at the Ministry of Commerce and MOFCOM, and obviously trade is very close to your heart. You've negotiated some of the trade agreements. In fact, Mr. Spooner negotiated a U.S.-Singapore free trade agreement. Sometimes we need to have you meet him because you obviously you negotiated the Australia-China free trade agreement. So welcome, and we'll really look forward to what you have to share with us today. And then obviously, Ambassador Allen, I should have noticed this more before. I mean, obviously, Craig has had a wonderful tenure with the U.S. Foreign Services, and Singapore is very close to Brunei, and we share the same currency. So hopefully that will be an opportunity, because I'm originally from Singapore, for us to connect on that front as well. So we have excellent panelists here today, and so I'm not going to say any more. Hopefully that's all I'm going to say today, right now on this panel. But just to kick off, and Mr. Hu, probably will start with you, right? Like I said, we can't travel to China right now, so I would really like for you, you talk a lot with Chinese businesses, and you obviously also interact with U.S. businesses. But from a Chinese company's perspective, what is your current sentiments on the ground? How do they? We've heard some pretty weighty policies and headwinds, but what are they on the ground? What is their sentiments when it comes to investing in the U.S., trading with the U.S.? What are they looking at right now? What are their interest areas? What are their concerns? Go ahead, Mr. Hu.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, and it's my great pleasure joining today's roundtable. Well, actually, I had the chance of visiting Indiana, but no longer since the pandemic began. We had almost 2 years right now talking about the sentiments back in China in terms of the trading and investment with the U.S. partners. I think maybe we can say that right now the bilateral relations is at the most difficult time, and probably the trade and investment relations are more or less the same. But that said, I think things are still going on, and what should happen actually still happen, including the investment from China, to the U.S. and I still can sense the wish, the desire, the willingness of the Chinese companies, to do business, to invest here. And this is not only kind of feeling, but it's supported with the figures, both in trade and in investment. I think Mr. Allen just demonstrated the figures with Indiana, and that is one example. And in terms of the overall trade of China with US, actually, the figures I have is in 2020, for example, the export, of the US to the world, excluding China, dropped by 15%, but its exports to China increased by 17.1%. And the overall bilateral trade in that year had a growth rate of 8.3%. And in the first 9 months of this year, we had an even greater growth of the bilateral trade at a rate of 35.4%, with the Chinese exports increased by 33%, while imports from US is at a rate of 43.5%. So as you can see that the business is still going on, and the willingness is still there, and in terms of the investment, probably this is a more difficult area because investors has a more straightforward feeling of the atmosphere here, but the figures we have from the Chinese side is that in the year 2019 we had still 3.8 billion US dollars investment coming from China into US, and in the year 2020 it comes up to be 6 billion. And if we look at the figures from the Rhodium Group, it's even higher. So basically, as I said, I mean, things are going on, and the willingness is still there. And I think it's not only because US is the largest and most diversified economy, the largest market, but also because of the strong growth in China, the complementarity of the economic structure and products. And I think more importantly is probably the long-established business-to-business relationship, people-to-people relationship, and also the interdependence of each other in the supply chains. This is not something that can be, broken overnight. I mean, if you have a business partner in China that is dating back to, even 10 years ago, I don't think things will be changed overnight and very quickly. And I think that is something that will still support the bilateral trade, business, investment relations. And in terms of the future, I mean, looking to the years coming, also, I think Chinese companies see new opportunities. Definitely, I mean, the complementarity changes dynamically. The US right now welcomes investment in manufacturing sector, and no doubt this is something strong at the Chinese side. And as a matter of fact, our figure sees that the first sector where investment from China have chosen in all these years is the manufacturing sector. And I think there are a couple of very good projects in Indiana also from China in the manufacturing. And right now, US is thinking of upgrading the infrastructure, and definitely this is something that the Chinese side is also having the advantages, and so both sides also agree that there are a great need for future collaboration in terms of some global changes like climate change, all these things, and definitely these are the new areas I think where the opportunities for further collaborations will be there. So this is really a good side, in terms of if we look at this the overall difficult situation of bilateral relations. That said, I think also we must be realistic in terms of the worries from the Chinese companies, the Chinese side. I think this is still growing, and in particular in terms of the uncertainties, unpredictability of the bilateral relationship, the bilateral business ties ahead. It is almost a year since President Biden took office, the new administration came in. But as companies see it, till now, things remain largely unchanged, except for good gestures, some contacts. But in substance, they still have expectations. I think the general feeling right now is kind of, in a sense, frustrating or helpless. And frankly speaking, I think most Chinese companies do not understand at all, nor would they accept, these grounds on which the policies and measures here in Washington were taken. And the main concerns, I think, talking with them and the feeling is that I think the tariff being the most outstanding issue, because a lot of Chinese companies, they know, because we had long negotiations with the US, with our trading partners during our accession to the WTO. So a lot of Chinese companies know that the tariffs shall not be higher than the level promised and committed by a nation to its trading partners in the World Trade Organization. But the fact is that all of a sudden, this is no longer the case in the trade with the US. And this is not only extra burden for them in terms of, exporters, importers, or consumers, but more is that they will have a worry that whether in the future there will be another round of new tariffs coming. So this is really something that is a very big concern for the Chinese companies and the business communities. And this affects not only trade, frankly speaking, and also investment, because as far as I know, there are certain projects that has been suspended because of the tariff uncertainty of the intermediate products to be imported under the project. So this is one of the major concern, and there are some others. One is the investment review, which will lead to the hesitation and reluctance as to whether, the Chinese investors, they should really proceed with their projects without knowing what will finally happen or what unexpected factors will come out to destroy all the efforts. Companies in certain sectors and also companies having SOE, state-owned enterprise background, are particularly affected. They are usually the ones that are very good in terms of some of the sectors and all the, for example, the infrastructure projects. And I think it's more worrying is the feeling towards the political atmosphere here in Washington, and a lot of people, they have the sense that why all the things relating to China are virtually all politicized. I mean, there are more bills against China, and Chinese companies were and are being produced, and this is really invisible kind of thing that affects the willingness of some of the Chinese companies, in particular. As far as I talk with some of the companies, when they are making efforts and become outstanding in competition for some large projects here. They don't know, I mean, whether finally they will be the victim of this kind of atmosphere.
Right.
So basically, I think that's the sentiment, and I don't know, probably I've been talking too much, but
No.
I think this is the first part I think that I would like to share with you.
Yes.
Thanks.
And I absolutely agree. The numbers don't lie, right? I mean, the numbers don't lie, and both sides still want to do business. But the uncertainty, the frustration, the helplessness, I definitely hear. We heard from the previous panel too, and it sounds like that's sort of consistent as well what you're hearing. So I'm gonna, so Craig, I'm gonna pose the same questions to you as well. Knowing that your organization, phenomenal job, engaging these American companies as as they do business in China. So what are your members and what are you seeing as far as sentiments of U.S. businesses, knowing that again there seems to be a rebound in kind of investments in China, from some of the lower couple of few years. What are you hearing and seeing, and what are U.S. companies kind of still have strong interest, and what are they concerned about, right? We have blocking statutes and all kinds of different new policies coming out from China as well. So what are you seeing and hearing right now?
Well, thank you very much, Naomi. And I would say that I largely agree with the commercial counselor. As a former trade negotiator, I won't get competitive here and discuss the technicalities. I'll refrain from that. I largely agree with what he stated. So let's take I think if one were to come down from Mars or Jupiter and look at the bilateral trade and economic relationship, you'd say, this is a great relationship. Investment is increasing, trade is increasing rapidly. And people are not going back and forth, but that's a COVID thing more than anything. But of course, the reality is more complex than that. So our membership is largely multinational corporations, mostly invested in China. But we recently did a survey, and perhaps I could share with you just the top line results of that survey. And it comes from the summer. So fresh data, about 115 respondents, equally divided between services and manufacturing, mostly large companies. So this doesn't really reflect SMEs or portfolio investment, which is probably a different story, I think. But four main takeaways. The first is that the bilateral tensions do weigh on American companies doing business in China. And it is their number one concern. And this is because, and the commercial counselor intimated this, but some Chinese buyers are finding American suppliers to be questionable. And in some cases, we're getting specced out of particularly high technology areas. The tariffs are absolutely a manifestation of the political tension, and they have hurt some companies very badly, some companies not at all. Mostly it's small, medium-sized manufacturers that have been hit by them. The second observation of our companies is that within China, we're finding it increasingly difficult to compete. And there are a lot of reasons for that. China has an industrial policy that it is pursuing aggressively. Data and cybersecurity have become a much bigger problem than it had been in the past. Intellectual property, government procurement is increasingly a issue, and we could talk about that in detail. The third major takeaway is that this market is critical for American companies. 96% of our members are profitable in China, and many of them more so than in other developing markets. And nearly all of our members are increasing their investments in China, not reducing their investment. It's a very important market. China produced 30% of global growth over the last 10 years. I would estimate China will produce about 30% of global growth over the next 10 years. We gotta be there. We will be there. The fourth major takeaway is that there is a decrease in optimism about the market. Perhaps reflecting many things. China is much more mature as a market now. China is not a low labor cost market at all. And the tensions are exogenous factors for companies that are outside of the control of individual companies. So marginal investment dollar is often going to third markets where they can export freely back to the US or to China. Marginal dollar, particularly in the tech sector, may not be going into the China market. So if I follow the pattern of great Hoosier David Letterman and gave the top 10 complaints of American companies doing business in China, I can't do it as well as David Letterman. But anyway, I would, going down from number 10 to number 1, cost increases. China is becoming much more expensive. Labor, land, you name it, more expensive. COVID impact would be number 9. It's impossible to travel. China remains a Confucian country where person-to-person contact is very important. If you have to make a big investment decision, it's hard. Licenses and approval would be number 8. It's difficult for anyone to get licenses and approval in China, perhaps a little bit more difficult for foreign companies than it is for local companies. Export controls and sanctions would be number 7. But for the companies that this affects, this is a very big impact, particularly in the high-tech area. The Department of Commerce or the Department of Defense, Department of Treasury have indicated that there are some 900 Chinese companies of concern. And this makes it kind of complicated for American companies to know whom they can do business with. Intellectual property protection is number 6. I would say earlier in our survey that was number 1 for year after year after year, but not over the last several years. It's much better now, simply. We could talk about that in more detail. Patents, great. Copyright, better. Trademark, trade secrets, we got a way to go, but overall, it is better. Tariffs, as Mr. Hu mentioned, I would concur with him completely. This is a big problem for companies importing or exporting. That's number 5. Number 4 is data. Data and personal information rules are becoming more difficult, going both ways as governments tighten up on privacy. And China's rules are complex, overlapping. They're oftentimes in draft, not in final. Who do you call? There are many issues there. Visas are becoming very difficult. This is a COVID problem, but it's more than a COVID problem. It's very difficult to bring people to China. The second biggest problem is competition with Chinese companies. Chinese companies are really good. They're really cheap. They're really innovative. They have speed and they got scale. And to compete with them, especially the private Chinese companies, is challenging. And then finally, and I think the commercial counselor covered this very well, is the bilateral relationship. Wither the bilateral relationship. I don't think that there's going to be an overall decoupling, but there might be somewhat of a detangling of the relationship in some high technology areas. And if you're in one of those areas, it's very complicated not to get caught up in a conflict of law. We are all very concerned of conflict of law. where you make a choice. You violate Chinese law or you violate US law. Nobody wants to be in that position. Let's hope that we can avoid it. We have thus far, but I'm not confident about the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. You know, that's why we brought you, we brought Mr. Hu, because then we know who to call if something gets too complex, if something gets a little confusing. And we obviously hope that our audience would call Colin, you know, call the ACSI. We're exactly here to try to bridge that gap, just really the purpose of this conference. So that was very insightful. And, you know, we have to, you know, I'm mindful of time and I want to leave time for questions. See, the sentiments, I think, pretty consistent, you know, and I think it has been consistent. I think there's a little bit of weariness. I think at the start, people were kind of hoping that there was, you know, something in the horizon is going to turn. You know, President Biden's administration, is there going to be a turn in the relationship? You know, just different things, people, you know, glimmers of hope in the horizon, right? But I feel like there's almost like a fatigue, right? A fatigue in the business community waiting for something to break. And unfortunately, you know, we haven't really seen a break that there yet. So this is the environment we operate in. We can't really change it. And I think we hear a little bit of that exasperation, that frustration in that business panel that we had, you know, before your presentation, Craig. And so the question becomes this. This is the environment that we are in, okay? Based on where you sit and what you're looking for, hoping for, and doing perhaps behind the scenes without us knowing, right? Whether in Washington or with the Chinese government and the different organizations and parties that can influence some of these policies. What are you seeing are some of the things that U.S. and Chinese companies, so Mr. Hu, you know, for you, you know, Chinese companies, right? Sorry, for U.S. companies that are looking to do business in China. Question is, you know, what should we be thinking about? What are some of the challenges, the opportunities, you know, how do we position ourselves, you know, especially with some of those that are already doing business, you know, that's one group. What about those that haven't? You know, there are many Hoosier companies thinking, you know, wow, 3.9 billion exports. I want to get some of that, you know, should I be doing that? You know, is buy China sentiment so strong, you know, too hard to overcome, you know? So I'm going to pose that to you first and kind of get a sense of, okay, this is the reality. How do we take the relationship forward? What can we do as in the business community who still want to do something, whether we are currently in China or not? What are some of the opportunities and challenges that you can help us kind of overcome and kind of position the way we approach this market entry?
Mr. Hu?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Allen. Thank you, Naomi. Well, it's always I mean, the fact is always that we have to survive. We have to go on, you know, under the situation we are in. And my feeling is that, you know, we, not only myself, but also Chinese companies, Chinese in general, have a feeling that the country will become better. The economy will further develop. We have confidence to make our life better. And in the business environment, I think, as witnessed by all the American companies working in China, things have been quite different compared with years ago. And I definitely can say that in the future, because the government knows quite well the future direction of our policies. So the overall business environment will be better. And so therefore, for advices to the companies from the US, I would say I agree with what Mr. Allen said. I mean, the companies are quite different. For those that have already been in China, I think major large US companies are already been very successful in China for years, for decades. And for them, I don't think I have good advices for them because they probably know much better the business, you know, the realities there and the competitions they have. But I think there's one thing that at least they can do. And I think what they see and the experience in China are definitely not what are being pictured, sort of reported here in the US. Definitely, these are different. And I sincerely hope that they can sort of play certain role in helping the overall society here in the US understand China better, to help the honor people here in the US to understand China better. And I certainly encourage more people-to-people communication. And I think those who have visited China, who can observe China in a perspective, inclusive and objective, will definitely understand, how the two countries should, go along with each other. And the Chinese philosophy has always been, peaceful coexistence. There are so many things we look down into our philosophy. You can see this is something that is deep in our history. As to the small, medium-sized enterprises, I don't think they should be really too much disturbed with the current sentiments, all the things. And I think the opportunities in China are huge. And I would encourage SMEs to try and test the water, and maybe some of the studies in terms of the niche market they are in is important. At least having an overview of how things or the market is in China. And the other thing is it's very important to have a business partner, because the culture are really different. The way of governance are different, the behavior are different. And I think for SMEs, these are really very big obstacles. But if you can have and can find or locate a business partner you can trust, I think this definitely will be very, very helpful in exploring the opportunities in this huge market in China. And also, right now, I think there are a lot of major exhibitions in China, both large ones like Expo, which will be held quickly, and also the very specific ones. Quite a lot of them I myself don't know, but I was told that there's a special trade show specializing in certain sectors. Like a couple of days ago, I was told that there are packing material kind of show there. So probably these are the things that SMEs can look into and see whether they can really, avail these kind of opportunities and find their reliable business partners. And I think this definitely will be helpful for their, development in this market, and also good for people-to-people communication and understanding, and which finally, I think, will contribute to the overall bilateral relations of these two countries. And so basically, I think this is what I want to say. And I also would like to listen to Mr. Allen's views on this. I think it will be also enlightening for me and also for the participants here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Craig, would you share then from the US side, what you're seeing? What advice you have for Chinese companies that are still thinking about doing business here?
Let me say a few words about tariffs. So the United States and China have respectively put on tariffs about 20% on average going across the Pacific. And Mr. Hu is right that the United States instigated this after a 301 analysis under US law rather than WTO regulations. These tariffs remain in place. And if you're a new to market company looking at America for the first time, or in the case of an Indiana company looking at China for the first time, you have a bit of a challenge here at number one, understanding what the tariffs are, because they're sui generis, they're unique to each country. And it's not the WTO or MFN tariff at all. And so finding out what the tariffs are, now the Chinese side and the American side both have an exclusion process here, but it's complicated. And on the Chinese side, you need to find a buyer to run to Mr. Hu's colleagues in Beijing to apply. And maybe they don't want to do that. That maybe they'll get it, maybe they won't. How long will they have it for? If it's not a long-term relationship, do they really want to do it? And so it's really the new to market companies, small, medium-sized enterprises that are taking it smack in the face here, going both ways across the Pacific. And I really regret because there's dynamic growth going on in both economies, and we need Chinese products. Chinese need our products. But the two governments have got twisted up here in a tariff situation, the prospects of which to me are completely unclear. And I've asked all of the responsible people, and it's unclear to them, to be completely honest. I fear that these tariffs might be on in perpetuity. Why not? If somebody could tell me the mechanism by which we would get the tariffs withdrawn, I would be a very happy man. But I'm not, because I worry that they could be around for a long time. The negotiation process to address the 301 issues that originally brought about the tariffs has been stalled. And I don't sense a lot of forward progress. We are hopeful that there will be detailed negotiations, and that China, as it continues its reform and opening process, particularly considering joining the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, we are hopeful that it will make the reform moves necessary that would allow us to get rid of the tariffs and allow our companies to be able to breathe a little bit easier. But right now, for small, medium-sized enterprises, I can't in good conscience say, try China, you'll like it. Let's hope that we get back there soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And I think I hear what you're saying, right? I think you know, uncertain is probably the best word we can use. And then pessimism is probably, you know, what everyone is sort of more feeling about. So I think, you know, I want to, you do have some questions, and we have like 8 minutes left. I think what I'm taking away from this panel so far, right, is that there is appetite on both sides, okay, to continue to do business, right? I mean, there are so many long-term ties that have been established. The question becomes, you know, if you're a newcomer and you're trying to look at export for the first time, import for the first time, it probably a lot more hoops to jump through if you're considering the headwinds that we have so far. But in any case, if you have opportunity comes to you and you're in our audience and you want to navigate it, that's where organizations like ours, like Craig's, and even Mr. Hu and his team, a wonderful team, that can help navigate and help you, you know, because if the opportunity is there, I don't think you say no, but probably not sign up for yourself for it, perhaps. But in any case, so I want to get to the questions. The first question we have here to you, Mr. Hu, I don't know if you have seen it, but I guess the question becomes, you know, if you want to do business in China, and we all know this, you have to be in China. You got to see, you got to meet your people, you got to build the guanxi. So are we going to reinstate visas soon? You think it's going to open? You know, I'm from Singapore. Singapore used to be 3-4 cases, now daily 3,000 to 4,000. Okay, unheard of, you know, now. So are we going to see a lighten up? You know, I think US and even Singapore, where I'm from, you know, we are moving to the normality, okay? You know, travel lanes and stuff like that. So where do you see us headed for when it comes to China's policy on that front?
Well, I think right now I should say that the policy has been very much kind of trying to balance. But the fact is that because of the situation of the pandemic, I think the border will largely remain closed unless you will have a 100% guarantee that, you know, basically they will be no cases going through border. So that we have very strict test requirements, quarantine, all the things, and right now I think it's really a very difficult time for the business community. What the embassy and the consulate has been doing is trying to facilitate to the extent possible, in the sense that for those business visitors who really have urgent issues or matters, if they have kind of contacts, back in China, with the local government, ensuring that all the quarantine measures can be, implemented, arranged can be made. Then, through the business associations here in the U.S., the consulates and the embassy will try to facilitate with limited visa. And I think in view of the situation, probably nothing. I mean, for the Chinese and for the 1.4 billion people who have suffered some of the cases, who had this bad experiences, it's really a top priority issue, and I don't think things will change very quickly. But that said, I think what the government has been trying to do, at least not only domestically but also internationally, is trying to say, calling for joint efforts so that we can have this pandemic controlled as soon as possible, and we can return to a normal kind of situation. And I think actually coming to this particular point, the good news is here, we've just heard that there will be lifting of the travel restrictions here in the States. President Biden signed the latest relevant policy, but right now I think still, this is a difficult issue from the Chinese side.
So I know we are down to our last. Oh, Craig, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, Naomi, thank you. We have just been invited into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs later in this week to discuss a proposal that we have submitted for expedited travel for business people. Councillor Hu is 100% correct that this is a difficult situation, but there is risk mitigating measures that can take place. And we have put forward a proposal to have a very carefully defined green channel for business people that have to get over. I have thousands of executives that need to get back and forth. So there are some simple things that could be done that will expedite. And I'm very pleased that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has invited us in for a discussion to try and address the problems that the councillor so wisely articulated. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we have like 2 more minutes, and I unless there are more questions that come in, I do want to, maybe as a wrap up to this session, a little bit of crystal ball gazing. I'll ask, Mr. Hu and Craig, if Craig, if you can send a message to Mr. Hu, right, to the Chinese government, one message on behalf of the U.S. companies, what would that be? And then Mr. Hu, similar to you, right? If you, if Craig, knows people in Washington, if there's one message that you would like him to carry, right, back to his Washington network, what would that be? So Craig, shall we start with you?
Sure. Yeah. I think that it is magnificent that the Chinese government has articulated its expectation to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. By the way, I would have to say parenthetically that 95% of that is compatible with U.S. law. What I would advise MOFCOM and other regulators in China is begin to implement today. Why not today? And if you were to do that, then that would be very well received across the world. CPTPP is WTO plus. It's a good agreement, and the Chinese government has very wisely committed itself. But don't put off the implementation. Welcome to begin that today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hu?
Yeah, thank you very much, Alan. Actually, what I want to say is what or how we can do to alter the kind of picture of China and Chinese companies here in the US. And this is really something, you know, at least I feel after coming to be posted here, living here, in my daily contacts with all the people here, I don't think there's a kind of feeling. You know, we are people, we know our life, we want to make our life better, we work hard. I think all the people all around the world are the same. But how come, you know, at the political level, there's kind of a feeling here that everything from China you should put in some in a different category. So this is really something I think we all need to think about. And I think the business communities, in particular those who are in China for years, I mean, on the other side, I don't think the Chinese business here in the US has been working so successfully as the American ones have, but certainly on this particular point, I think we need the help of the people of the business community. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hu. Thank you, Ambassador Allen. I mean, this was wonderful. We really appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll welcome you back some other time, hopefully in person next time in Indiana. So as we all,
thank you.
Yeah. And as they all say, you know, all good things must come to an end. And we really trust that everyone today have gleaned something. You know, even if nothing, I feel a sense of camaraderie, okay? That we are all in this together, we're gonna make it work. The good and bad thing is, as attorneys, a lot of these uncertainties when they call attorneys, okay? So we did not lobby Washington, we did not lobby the Chinese government, but maybe we're one of the positive casualties, so to speak, okay? But, you know, in a world where there's just anxiety, fear, and maybe even some hate, okay, I'm just very pleased that ACSI has the opportunity to host a conference like this, and all the participants and all our sponsors for making this possible, because then we can continue the dialogue, continue to show that there is still this strong desire to make this work. So really, I know we can't see you. If you can join me in thanking our attendees, all our sponsors, our panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time. And then our board members as well, thank you. And then Matt and your conference committee, thank you so much for putting this conference together. And then obviously we have to thank Colin. Colin obviously did a lot to make this all happen. So thank you everyone. And for those who are able to join us later today at 4 o'clock, we welcome you for in-person reception that's going to be hosted at our firm. And, you know, our Indiana Secretary of Commerce, Bradley Chambers, I haven't even had a privilege to meet him yet. I think, you know, he's been hunkered down in IEDC doing making sure that he gets to know his staff. And so I think this is one of the first few public events that he's attending. So we're looking forward to meeting him, honoring Harrison Ding with a Legacy Award at the reception as well. So looking forward to meeting everyone. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I don't ask you to complete the survey and the evaluation at the end. Okay, Colin would not let me go. So we are so thankful. I can't see all of you, but I'm hopeful that we will see a lot of you today at the reception. So have a wonderful rest of your day. And then till 2022, hopefully we bring a different report in a year. All right. Goodbye and good day.